For generations, Big Ben has remained implacable above an ever-changing political scene. From the site of the old Palace of Westminster, it's only a stone's throw to what was once the tilt yard, the cockpit and tennis court of another royal palace in Whitehall. Horse Guards Parade has an air of old-world solidity as it prepares once again to be the centrepiece of one of the great military and national celebrations. To most people, it's called Trooping the Colour. To the men of the Household Division, it's the birthday parade, their unique gift to their sovereign and colonel-in-chief, who this year celebrates her 71st birthday. Before Big Ben was built, Londoners would set their watches by one of the capital's oldest clocks, on the top of Horse Guards building. Below it is the office of the Major General commanding the Household Division. And it's from those windows that Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, and her guests will watch the parade. Just as, for the past few years, there are 6 guards on parade today, a guard in this instance consisting of 3 officers and 70 men. And beside number 6 guard, the colour party that carries the Queen's colour, the 2nd Battalion Scots Guards. 15 years ago to the day, the battalion were claiming victory at the Battle of Mount Tumbledown, the action that led to the Argentine surrender at the end of the Falklands War. To commemorate that battle honour, there's a laurel wreath around the finial. And the colour is being carried by one of the few veterans of the war still with the regiment, Colour Sergeant Alan Bunyan, who, as a young Lance Corporal, was 2IC of the Point Section of G Company, which led the battalion attack. Their mission was to take out 2 machine gun posts, and by way of a pre-match pep talk, his platoon sergeant said, "Don't worry, they're .5-inch guns. If you get hit, you won't know anything about it." Well, only the Welsh Guards, who of course were also in the Falklands, are not represented among the 6 guards on parade today. Number 1 Guard are known as the Escort for the Colour, that is, until they've collected the colour later on in the parade, and they're found by F Company of the Scots Guards. F Company was established as an independent, or what's called incremental company, in 1992 to maintain the traditions of the disbanded 2nd Battalion and to carry its colour on public duties and other ceremonial occasions. It's the first time that one of the new incremental companies will troop its colour. Numbers 2 and 3 Guards are found by the 1st Battalion Scots Guards. The Scots are actually 3rd in order of seniority among the Guards regiments, although they are the oldest regiment, having been raised in 1642 when King Charles I issued a commission to the 1st Marquess of Argyl. Number 4 Guard is found by Nijmegen Company, another independent company that maintains the customs and traditions of the 2nd Battalion Grenadier Guards after they went into suspended animation in 1994. Formed in 1656, they were known as the 1st Regiment of Foot Guards until they utterly defeated an assault by the Grenadiers of Napoleon's French Imperial Guard at Waterloo. Number 5 Guard is found by the 1st Battalion Irish Guards, the 4th Regiment of Foot Guards, who were formed by command of Queen Victoria on the 1st of April 1900 in honour of the bravery shown by all the Irish regiments who fought in the Boer War. And finally, number 6 Guard, which is found by number 7 Company, Coldstream Guards, yet another incremental company. They maintain the traditions of the 2nd Battalion Coldstream Guards, who went into suspended animation at the end of 1993. And lined up in front of Horse Guards building, the 18 officers who will shortly draw their swords and take post in front of their respective guards, 3 officers to each guard. Well, while the preparations continue here, the smooth-running royal machine is working efficiently at the other end of the Mall. In between here and Buckingham Palace, the verdant green of St James's Park provides a wonderful, peaceful oasis amidst the clatter of modern London. How different it would have been when deer roamed the forested park 450 years ago, threatened only by the arrows of King Henry VIII's hunting parties. And down at the far end of the Mall, Buckingham Palace behind the Victoria Memorial. And just to the left of the central gateway, the Sovereign's escort, found by the Household Cavalry Mounted Regiment. Divisions 1 and 2 found by the lifeguards in their scarlet tunics and white plumes. And then in front of Canada Gate, the massed mounted bands of the Household Cavalry, the bands of the lifeguards and the Blues and Royals in their magnificent state tunics. And they will play the national anthem that greets the arrival of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, as she leaves the palace. She will drive around the Victoria Memorial and up the Mall to Horse Guards Parade. And the escort commander will give the orders. Queen Mother accompanied by the Duchess of Gloucester, and what a busy time the Queen Mother is having. Only yesterday she was up at Catterick in North Yorkshire to present a new guidon as Colonel-in-Chief of the Queen's Royal Hussars, accompanied by His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh, the Deputy Colonel-in-Chief. And then on Monday she'll be at Windsor for the Garter ceremony, where the Duke of Gloucester, who is also in the carriage, will be on for the first time as a new Knight of the Garter. So we will see them in a few minutes arriving at the other end of the Mall here on Horse Guards Parade, where the man responsible for keeping control of all that goes on is the field officer in Brigade Waiting, Lieutenant Colonel Johnny Stuart, who's the commanding officer of the 1st Battalion Scots Guards, riding Emma, known as the centre horse. And the 3 officers of the escort, the ensign, and the escort is the subaltern of the escort, who's furthest from us, Captain Timothy Hutchinson, standing 6 foot 8 inches tall. It's his job to lead the escort as they troop the colour through the ranks. He says he grows 2 inches as that happens. And then in the middle of the escort, the ensign, only 6 foot 4 inches, 24-year-old Lieutenant Christopher Bell, an Oxford graduate and winner of the Queen's Medal at Sandhurst, a distinguished award recognising a combination of military and academic achievements. And then nearest to us, the captain of the escort, Major Charles Page, also 6 foot 4 inches tall, who has a master's degree from King's College London, and 15 years ago on this day was a platoon commander with G Company, leading the assault on Mount Tumbledown. And then over in front of the garden wall of number 10 Downing Street, the massed bands of the Household Division, the 5 bands of the Foot Guards regiments, 220 musicians in all, and behind them the 3 ranks of corps and drums and pipes of drums of the 1st Battalion of the Scots and Irish Guards. They're all under the direction of the Senior Director of Music, Lieutenant Colonel David Price. And in their front, the 3 drum majors, within the middle, the Senior Drum Major, Stevie Boyd of the Irish Guards, on his 9th Queen's Birthday Parade. And among the many guests watching for the first time as Prime Minister, Mr. Tony Blair and his wife Sherry. Well, they all wait here for the arrival of the Queen Mother, but at Buckingham Palace, Her Majesty the Queen is just leaving, and she too will be greeted by a royal salute. Trumpet Major Peter Carson from the Household Cavalry Mounted Regiment plays the royal salute as the Crown Equerry and Equerry in waiting trot forward ahead of the ivory mounted phaeton to protect Her Majesty as she rides up the Mall. A phaeton that was built for Queen Victoria in 1842 and was restored for this very parade in 1987 by the Royal Mews carriage restorer Eric West, who is retiring this year. It was a carriage that was designed to be self-driven, but on this occasion is being driven by the Queen's head coachman, Colin Henderson, and she is followed by the 4 royal colonels: His Royal Highness the Grand Duke of Luxembourg, Colonel of the Irish Guards; the Duke of Kent, Colonel of the Scots Guards; Prince Philip, Colonel of the Grenadiers; and the Prince of Wales, Colonel of the Welsh Guards. And as they leave Buckingham Palace, the Queen Mother is just turning onto the approach road at Horse Guards Parade. Deputy head coachman John Nelson is driving one of the 2 barouches from the Royal Mews, and the mass bands will play the national anthem as the carriage turns through number 3 guard. Her Majesty will join her guests upstairs in the office of the Major General. And it's 15 years ago to the day that the current Major General, Ian Mackay-Dick, was a major helping to orchestrate the attack on Mount Tumbledown. At 1400 on the 12th of May, the QE2 set sail from Southampton. On board were the 2nd Battalion Scots Guards, together with the 1st Battalion Welsh Guards and the Gurkhas. It was an emotional farewell. The long voyage to the South Atlantic lay ahead. After a cold, wet stopover at San Carlos, the battalion began its move by sea to Bluff Cove on the 6th of June. This last push from the landing ship Intrepid had been expected to take 4 hours. The Major General, then 2IC of the battalion, was on the bridge of one of the 4 landing craft.
I was in the fortunate position of being next to Major Ewan South Battalion, who was in charge and obviously navigating. And so I thought I would keep reasonably dry, but I was mistaken. I had 4 layers of clothing on my legs and 6 layers of clothing on my top. And when we arrived at Bluff Cove, 7 hours later, not 4 hours later, I was soaked to the skin. So you can imagine what the soldiers in the bowels of the craft were like. They were completely soaked, and some of them suffering very badly from hypothermia.
2 days later, at Bluff Cove on the 8th of June, between 1100 and 1145, 3 waves of Skyhawk aircraft flew over their position. The battalion put up a curtain of fire with all guns blazing, shooting down at least 2 aircraft. They fired a total of 18,600 rounds. Their confidence, though, was quickly dampened later that evening by the sad news of the serious casualties sustained by their comrades, the Welsh Guards and others, on board Sir Galahad at Fitzroy.
The plan was for 4-2 Commando to capture Mount Harriet, for 3 Para to capture Mount Longdon, and for 4-5 Commando to capture a feature called 2 Sisters. These attacks all succeeded with some very fierce fighting, particularly where 3 Para were concerned. And the next stage of the plan was for the Scots Guards to fly up to an assembly area just behind the commandos on Mount Harriet, dig in and attack Mount Tumbledown on the night of the 13th and 14th of June.
While digging in, shells aimed at the Royal Marines on Mount Harriet landed around them.
One sergeant, I remember, was wounded. I remember his name, Sergeant McGeorge, one of the toughest, fiercest sergeants we had, so that was a blow. The reason I remember that so well is because one of the enemy shells landed on a guardsman's belt, and it hit a smoke grenade, a white phosphorus smoke grenade, which was set off.
The attack was due to start at 2100. G Company set off first and secured their objective without firing a shot. When at 22:30 the left flank company, led by Major John Kisley, moved through G Company, they met immediate opposition and lost a number of men killed and wounded. They were pinned down for 4 hours in driving blizzards and freezing cold. At 02:30, Major Kisley decided to lead an assault up the mountain. This was to take 3 hours and involved very close quarter fighting using every weapon available, including bayonets. He started with 32 men and arrived at the top with only 6. At that point, 3, including his platoon commander, were cut down by machine gun fire. The remaining 3 held on for 15 minutes until reinforcements fought their way up to join them. It had taken 7 hours, but it wasn't the end of the matter.
Although from where he was, he could see Stanley, the lights of Stanley below him, there was still more enemy on the 3rd part of the mountain. And so the 3rd part of the plan then started. That was a very fierce little battle in which, sadly, more people were wounded, including a very brave platoon commander called Robert Lawrence, who was leading his men from the very front, and he was shot in the head by the enemy a few moments, really, before the battle was over. So anyway, right flank succeeded. They captured their objective, and the mountain was ours. And people may say, you know, why do young servicemen, young soldiers, put up with these conditions? Why are they prepared to be pinned down for 4 hours? Why are they prepared to get soaking wet for 7 hours and then go and fight a battle and get pinned down for 4 hours and still not give up? And I've been asked that question. Before, obviously. And I think I would give as the main reason the fact that they were among friends, the fact that they would fight for their platoon, for their company, and for their battalion and their regiment. But above all, I think because they were among friends and didn't want to let each other down.
And that perhaps also a very strong recommendation for the regimental system. Back here on Horse Guards, the massed mounted bands just turning onto the approach road And they will play the Coronation March by Meyerbeer. Magnificent state postilion livery being worn by the Queen's head coachman, Colin Henderson, who's a former corporal of horse from the Household Cavalry Mounted Regiment. Some years ago, from 1984 to 1994, he ran his own coaching business before joining the Royal Mews. Iceland and Auckland are the two lovely greys pulling the ivory-mounted phaeton. And ahead of the phaeton, the mast-mounted bands will move along the approach road in front of the Guards Memorial, to be followed by the first two divisions of the Sovereign's escort, being found this year by the Life Guards. And up in the Major General's office, Queen Elizabeth already there watching the parade and playing host to many members of the royal family. The saddlecloth that you see on Iceland and Auckland is one that was divided from the original saddlecloth that Her Majesty used when she rode onto parade, with the two halves being the outside halves that show most to the public. Very summery outfit for Her Majesty today on what sadly is rather a dull and overcast day, although just some signs that the sun might be poking through. This is the 46th time since 1951 that Her Majesty has inspected her household division on this parade. The first time was in 1951, when of course she was still Princess Elizabeth, standing in for her sick father. The only time there hasn't been a parade since then was in 1955, when there was a rail strike. She goes behind the Queen's colour. The coachman will pay his respects to the colour, as will the royal colonels and everyone who passes behind it. Prince of Wales, Colonel of the Welsh Guards, nearest to us, riding a new charger this year, Invader, a 20-year-old black Irish draft gelding, a former household cavalry charger. And His Royal Highness Prince Philip also on a new charger, appropriately called Philippa. So the phaeton, at exactly the right time, as the clock starts to strike 11 o'clock, will draw up behind the dais, and Her Majesty will then be greeted by present arms and a royal salute played by the massed bands of the household division. And also paying their respects in Green Park, the King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery fire a 41-gun salute, 6 guns firing at 10-second intervals. It'll take them 7 minutes to complete. And in this year of anniversaries, it's the 50th anniversary of the King's Troop. They were known originally as the Royal Horse Artillery Riding Troop, and after an inspection by King George VI, he was so delighted with them, he dictated they should be known as the King's Troop, and that's what they've been called ever since. Now, Her Majesty will inspect the parade, and she'll do it to the slow march Morag of Dunvegan and Ye Banks and Braes. And pipes play Ye Banks and Braes of Bonny Doon. The Robbie Burns song will surely bring memories flooding back to Colour Sergeant Alan Bunyan. For as an entry in his war diary reminded him recently, this was the song that he sang to the boys holed up in a cold and windy sanger on the side of Mount Tumbledown. He used to fish for salmon in the River Doon as a small boy. Now the pipes will take a break while the bands play the traditional quick march Duncan Grey, and then the pipes rejoin for A Man's a Man, the company march of F Company. everyone will salute the sovereign standard of the Life Guards. Well, like all good military operations, this parade is divided into phases, and that completes phase 1, the inspection. Phase 2 is the troop by the massed bands in slow and quick time. Then we have the actual trooping of the colour through the ranks. Then part 4 is the march past in slow and quick time by the foot guards, and then the rank past at the walk and trot by the household cavalry. Amongst the Royal Colonels, His Royal Highness the Duke of Kent, who has been Colonel of the Scots Guards since October 1974, and he reviewed the parade at the second rehearsal a week ago. And nearest to us here, the Major General commanding the Household Division, Major General Ian Mackay-Dick, who we heard from earlier, who was commissioned into the Scots Guards in 1965, fought with them in the Falklands, and leaves the army in a week's time. How appropriate that it should be the colour of the 2nd Battalion that's trooped on his final parade. So now the inspection party will return to their positions in front of Horse Guards building. Her Majesty will be joined on the dais by the 2 colonels of the Household Cavalry regiments. On the left, Major General Lord Michael Fitzalan Howard, Colonel of the Life Guards, who has the appointment this year of Gold Stick in waiting. And on the far side, as we look now, General Sir Desmond Fitzpatrick, Colonel of the Blues and Royals. And so, as happens every year, the massed bands will complete the slow troop to the traditional march, the Hugenots by Meyerbeer. They'll then countermarch and go into the quick march Scottish Emblem by Archie Ellis. Lance Corporal Anthony Bell, who's seen service all around the world, including the Gulf War and 4 tours in Northern Ireland, now leaves the mass bands to position alongside the escort to beat the drummer's call. Later on this year, he'll join F Company as their company drummer. So the drummer's call is the sort of old-fashioned signal for the officers to take post and prepare for the trooping. An orderly takes the pace stick from the regimental sergeant major, Ian Gwynn, very smart, 6'2", and a brilliant shot. He nearly won the Queen's Medal at Bisley last year. So Captain Tim Hutchinson now gives his first orders. The subaltern taking command of the escort for the colour, and they will march forward, form left to the traditional tune British Grenadiers to collect the colour.
Escort for the colour! Aye! Left! Quick! Forward!
So while the escort dresses, the field officer will give orders for the remainder of the guards to change arms and slope arms. And then the regimental sergeant major will move round from behind the escort, collecting the ensign as he goes, and they will collect the colour then from the colour sergeant. And once it's safely in the keeping of the ensign, the escort will present arms. Regimental Sergeant Major's only previous troop was a Lance Corporal in 1979 when he was in the escort with the 2nd Battalion.
Escort to the colour! Present! Out!
So with the colour now safely in their charge, F Company become escort to the colour. And in a moment, they'll advance to troop the colour through the ranks of the 5 other guards to the music, Escort to the Colour.
Escort to the colour! Escort to the colour! Aye! A centre! Oh! Back!
While the massed bands play Escort to the Colour, they execute the second of 3 spin wheels. Now this is a manoeuvre that's unique to the Household Division. It figures nowhere in the manual of Army drill, and for a while it looks rather chaotic, but it allows the bands to maintain formation while changing direction on the spot. With musicians facing in all directions, a signal from one of the directors of music restores equilibrium before the whole thing gets out of control. the escort approach number 6 guard, the field officer will order the rest of the parade to present arms. The mass bands now play the Grenadiers' Slow March. Symbolism of this part of the parade dates back hundreds of years. The idea is that every man jack should be able to recognise his own unit's standard or colour so that they could rally round it in the fog of battle. Of the 40 battle honours recorded on the Queen's colour, names like Namur, Dettingen and Salamanca are merely distant reminders of the regiment's long and distinguished history. But the 40th scroll has considerably more relevance for these men. It says simply, Falkland Islands, 1982. To this day, the regiment's colours go with it wherever they may go in the world, the Gulf, Bosnia or Northern Ireland. There's still a crucial role for these men who combine superb ceremonial skills with all the complex disciplines of the modern battlefield soldier. The scholarly ensign, Lieutenant Christopher Bell, feels a great sense of pride at the honour of carrying the colour, coming as he does from a military family. His father was a Gurkha and military policeman, his grandfather a gunner, and his great-uncle a grenadier, before completing 2 full tours on Lancaster bombers, where he won the Distinguished Flying Cross. The Guards Memorial was originally erected to commemorate those from the Household Division who died in the First World War, but it now serves as a memorial to all Guardsmen who've given their lives around the world since then. The 2nd Battalion Scots Guards lost 8 men killed during the Falklands War. As F Company Commander Major Charles Page waits for his men to return to his command, he may be reflecting on what he describes as a defining moment in his life. The war gave me a sense of what is important and what isn't, he says. Shortly before going to the Falklands, he was the ensign mounting guard at Buckingham Palace. Before leaving Chelsea Barracks, one of the 2 regimental drill sergeants would hand him the colour. As a 19-year-old, wet behind the ears, he was conscious of his own inexperience beside the highly respected senior warrant officer, Drill Sergeant Danny White, and of the significance of the colours. A few short weeks later, Danny White was shot and killed in a diversionary attack on Mount Tumbledown, 15 years ago today. In memory of him and the others who gave their lives in that far-flung corner of the globe, Regimental Sergeant Major Ian Gwynn was determined that his men should put on a good show, both for Her Majesty and for them, that they should feel proud to have been Scots Guardsmen.
Escort to the Colour and advance!
So the subaltern completes his duties before the captain returns the compliment to the rest of the parade, ordering the escort to present arms.
Escort to the Colour! Present arms! Guards! Slow! Arms!
So now it's all back in charge of the field officer, who now makes the preparations for the march past by the foot guards in slow and quick time. The officer's taking post. He'll give orders for guards 1 and 5 to form into column.
Numbers 1 to 5 guards will retire. About turn.
Adjutant of the parade, Captain James McEwen.
At the halt. Right form. Quick march.
Movement at last for guards 2 to 5, and they march to the pipe tune Haselmere. Separate orders for number 6 guard.
Numbers 1 to 5 guards will advance. About turn. Number 6 guards, loose order, march. Move to the right in 3s. Form 3s. Right.
And the neutral slow march will be Royal Standard.
Guards will march past in slow and quick time. By the left. Slow march.
Gravel on Horse Guards Parade has been relaid this year, and it's a little too thick in places, which makes the staccato jab and slide of the slow march even more difficult. see these men in training in their modern camouflage kit, doing their best to remain invisible to the enemy. It's hard to imagine that this is how they once went into battle, locked shoulder to shoulder in their bright scarlet tunics, almost inviting the next salvo of grape shot. But in fact, the bright colours and huge bearskin caps were all designed to intimidate and frighten the enemy. Guards complete another left form. The ensign carries the colour to the front of the escort for the march past in slow time. Faces watching from the Major General's office above. They've seen it many times before, but it never loses its splendour and grandeur. The field officer, Lieutenant Colonel Johnny Stuart, on a passive Emma, prepares to lead the march past. Until October last year, he'd never ridden before, and he's been through intensive training in the months since then. He's only fallen off once and unfortunately hurt his back and was off for three weeks when he did. A flourish from the field officer and the major of the parade, Major Charlie McGrath of the Irish Guards. And then the Queen's colour will be lowered in salute to Her Majesty. Scots Guards slow march, the Garb of Old Gaul. With the colour let fly, we see the 40 scrolls containing the battle honours won during 350 years of loyal service. In the centre, the thistle of Scotland and the rose of England, issuing from one stem above the motto Unita Fortior, in unity is strength. And a Union flag in the corner distinguishes it as the Queen's colour of the 2nd Battalion. Numbers 2 and 3 Guards also found by the Scots Guards. The Garb of Old Gaul continues. For number 4 Guard, the slow march of the Grenadiers, Scipio. Number 5 Guard are found by the 1st Battalion of the Irish Guards, and their slow march is Let Erin Remember. Finally, the Coldstream Guards and Milanollo. Bringing up the rear is the adjutant of the parade, Captain James McEwen, riding India, who actually broke his left arm doing a 60-metre dash in the battalion sports day a month or two ago, but is back in the saddle now. Now, the neutral slow march is the Melodies of Scotland, an arrangement of Bonny, Mary of Argyl, coming through the Rye, and Westering home. Colonel Johnny Stuart, who's also a member of the Honourable Company of Archers, the Queen's personal bodyguard in Scotland. We'll ride over to the other side of the parade ground to position to give the orders for the quick march. Guards change smoothly from 65 to 116 paces per minute. The mass bands play the lovely tune, The Road to the Isles. Has been the tradition since Her Majesty first reviewed the parade as sovereign in 1952, and at her instructions the pipers moved to the front of the band for the quick march past when it's a Scots or Irish colour that's being trooped. time last year, the Scots Guards were in the early stages of a peacekeeping tour in Northern Ireland, at a time when the ceasefire was coming under increasing pressure. The personal and collective discipline required for such tasks is bred in many ways on the parade ground. Their immaculate turnout, the result of long hours of labour, their outstanding performance, the product of shared belief, confidence and trust that every man will do his duty to the highest standards. As they prepare once again to march past, this time in quick time, the colour will stay behind the escort, simulating battle formation. So the pipes will play the regimental quick march of the Scots Guards, Hielan Laddie. Number 4 Guard, the British Grenadiers. The Irish Guard's quick march is St. Patrick's Day. Finally, for the Coldstream Guards, Milanollo. Colonel Johnny Stuart, such a recent horseman, says he feels confident now, but he has no intention of riding again after this parade. The neutral quick march is Royal Stuart by the appropriately named Duncan Beat, a former director of music of the Scots Guards. Royal Stuart, of course, is the tartan that the Scots Guards pipers wear. So with the guards now back in their original positions, field officer will give the orders for the dressing to make sure they're all exactly as they should be. And then it'll be the turn of the household cavalry to rank past at the walk and trot.
Guards in open order. Left and right. Dress.
The mass bands move away to the tune Crags of Tumbledown Mountain. Tune that was written by the late pipe major Jimmy Riddell on Tumbledown Mountain, scribbled on the back of a cigarette packet. Sadly, he died earlier this year. The mass bands are moving out of the way to allow the massed mounted bands to take centre stage, led by their director of music, and then the two huge drum horses. Nearest the camera, Constantine of the Life Guards, and furthest, the skewbald Janus from the Blues and Royals. And they will play the cavalry march Preobrazhensky. The Preobrazhensky Guards were the senior regiment of the Imperial Russian Foot Guards, and the late Lord Louis Mountbatten, who was colonel of the Life Guards, had an uncle, the Grand Duke Serge Alexandrovich, who was a colonel in the Guards, and it became a favourite of Mountbatten's. It's played in his very dear memory. Field officer of the escort, Major Nick Garrett, leads the standard party. The standard bearer, Squadron Corporal Major Michael Bellringer, the standard coverer on the far side, and the trumpeter on the grey nearest to us, Trumpet Major Corporal Horse Peter Carson, the senior trumpeter in the Life Guards, who's in charge of the Life Guard state trumpeters. Carson's nickname in the regiment is Bond, James Bond. He's apparently very suave. Divisions 1 and 2 found by the Life Guards, the senior regiment in the British Army, who were formed as a band of loyal gentlemen to be the personal bodyguard of Charles II. As the Foot Guards present arms, the mounted bands play the slow march of the Life Guards. Standards of the Life Guards and the Blues and Royals are the only ones among all the standards, guidons and colours of the British Army which bear the royal arms and the motto Dieu est mon droit. Now the slow march of the Blues and Royals. The blue tunics are a relic of the old Royal Horse Guards, the Blues, who merged with the Royal Dragoons in 1969 to form the Blues and Royals. Two farriers both wear blue tunics, but the Lifeguards farrier has a black plume. He's farrier Lance Corporal of Horse Adrian Middleton, who used to be in the Coldstream Guards, and he spent time in Bosnia training them in modern farrier methods. Now the band plays the old regimental march of the Royals, to be followed by Trumpet Major Carson playing the trot call. The neutral trotters, Ken John Peel and Phil the Fluter's Ball. These men's colleagues in the Household Cavalry Regiment based at Windsor are now employed almost full-time in armoured cars on and off in Bosnia. The horse and carbine has given way to mechanised armour, but a passage from the regiment's history reminds us of their heritage. When the battle commenced, the Household Cavalry were on the right, and soon the enemy's shells fell amongst them. Yet under the bursting shells, the colossal troopers sat like statues amid a conflagration, quietly, as they had been wont to sit a short time before in the arched gateways of Whitehall. And that, of course, is a function they still perform, providing the Queen's Lifeguard in Whitehall for all but 3 weeks of the year, when the King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery give them a break. Now the regimental trot, the keel row. This time the standard is not lowered. Finally, a salute from the massed mounted bands led by Major Bob Garrity, the Director of Music of the Blues and Royals, riding on his last birthday parade. He retires from the Army next year. He wasn't actually due to be riding this year, but there's had to be a change in the Lifeguards, and so the duty has fallen to him again. These bands will be heavily involved in the royal pageant of the horse to celebrate the Queen and Prince Philip's 50th wedding anniversary at Windsor on the 5th of July. They'll then be involved in the royal tournament where they're riding mounted every day. They have a busy schedule coming up. The magnificent silver kettle drums weighing 60 pounds each of solid silver. And the superb gold coats of the mounted musicians from drawings of the coronation of Charles II. The lifeguards, kettle drummers and trumpeters wore virtually the same coats that were bought by the King because Parliament refused to pay for his musicians. The Lord Mayor of London also contributed to their cost. Now, when the Director of Music turns into the centre of the parade, that will be the signal for the field officer in brigade waiting to give the final royal salute.
Guards! Royal salute! Present arms!
So the field officer now prepares the guards to march off parade. Each guard will form 2 divisions of 35 men and close up into column. And they will then march off parade with their duties just about done for the day. All that is except for the escort, who will then mount Queen's Guard for the next 24 hours. It really is a very long duty for them. It's not only a ceremonial guard, but a tactical guard as well as night falls. They are seriously responsible for guarding the sovereign. No doubt there will be the odd party tonight as well. Certainly the annual Tumbledown dinner will be taking place as usual, with perhaps added significance this year.
Guards will form 3 ranks! Form 3 ranks!
The mass mounted bands move off into the approach road. They'll lead the whole procession back.
Upward! Turn!
While the divisions close up to the tune, the adjutant.
Divisions! Right form! Quick march! Divisions will advance! About turn!
And the divisions now close up on the escort to Prussian glory.
On the escort! Form close column! Remainder, quick march!
Divisions 1 and 2 of the Sovereign's escort will be followed by the Blues and Royals Divisions 3 and 4 as they move up behind the massed mounted bands in the approach road.
Left! Dress! Yards! Shoulder! Arms! Standard! East!
The other end of the approach road, just coming through Admiralty Arch, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, riding back down the Mall in her barouche. Her Majesty, who's to make yet another appearance in Country Life magazine in its 100th anniversary edition as one of the Pearl Girls. A family friend, Chips Channon, wrote of her many generations ago, she's mildly flirtatious in a very proper, romantic, old-fashioned Valentine sort of way. She makes every man feel chivalrous and gallant towards her.
Your Majesty's guards are ready to march off, ma'am.
So with permission duly granted for the march off, Colonel Johnny Stuart rides back to take up a position at the head of the foot guards and to give the orders for the quick march. Meanwhile, the garrison Sergeant Major, Perry Mason, 35 years a Coldstream Guardsman and 10 years the garrison Sergeant Major, waits to give the signal that all is clear in the approach road.
Guards! Turn! Low!
Meanwhile, Colin Henderson reappears with the ivory-mounted phaeton so that Her Majesty can ride at the head of her foot guards back to her London home at the end of yet another marvellous celebration of her official birthday.
To your duties!
The quick march is Scotland the Brave.
Quick march!
And Her Majesty loves the sound of Black Bear, the traditional march for the Scottish regiments returning to barracks. Well, in some ways, what we've seen today might seem an irrelevance in Tony Blair's New Britain. But I'm sure he wouldn't want to cast aside the qualities of honour and integrity, self-discipline, and a willingness to help others that are an essential part of military life. Qualities that are somehow embodied in that crimson silk flag. To quote from the Service of Consecration of New Colours, they are an abiding symbol of our duty towards our sovereign and our country, and a sign of our resolve to guard, preserve and sustain the great traditions of bravery and self-service, of which we are the proud inheritors. And so another page is turned in the glorious history of the Scots Guards. Major Charlie Page said he wanted this to be the best birthday parade ever. He said that at the time of the Falklands War, it was all rather mundane, and that with the naivety of youth, it didn't really have any effect on him. Well, since then, he's become very proud to have been part of it. And such are the traditions of the Household Division, that he and everyone involved today will feel equally proud of a job superbly done here. As Major General Ian Mackay-Dick said earlier, they did it for their battalion and their regiment, but most of all, because they didn't want to let their friends down. I don't know if this was the best ever, but it was certainly very good. Bye-bye.